Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Wow, this is super loud. All right. We are going to be covering arrest today, but I want to go over some stuff from last week in 207. I wasn't here, so there's a few things I want to make sure I cover. Before we get into material, your notice of examination came down on, it was either Monday or Tuesday. Filing is open. Don't wait till the last day to file. Get your application in, submit it electronically, all right? I am not going to spend a lot of time on the actual notice of examination, but it's definitely different than it's ever been in the past. They didn't describe the type of test you're getting. They didn't say if it's going to be on a computer terminal or a Scantron. They didn't mention in-basket. They didn't mention what you are required to study. They just said they will give you further instructions later on down the road. It was a rush job. I wouldn't bet on the June 6th date either. And the wording says testing will begin on June 6th. What do you mean will begin? Does that mean we're going to have numerous dates? It doesn't sound right at all. When we first saw it, we didn't even think it was legit. That's why we didn't put a message out saying that it was out there. Once we get more concrete information, which we usually do, we will provide it to you. The test is coming, yes, June-ish, or maybe July-ish. They're trying to push it for the July guys and girls. But the June 6th, I don't see that happening. Just the wording of the examination. DCAS and the department are not on the same page a lot of times with these exams. And that was definitely rushed by DCAS. But your test is coming. And yes, filing is open, so file. Do not wait to file, okay? So I wasn't here last Saturday. I had a vacation plan since 2018. If anybody had a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you. We have lives too. People have to fill in. I should not be missing any other classes going forward unless, God forbid, I don't wake up. Then God bless you and good luck come June or July. And hopefully I can give you some powers from heaven, all right? I want to go over some stuff from last week because complaints is about 38 procedures in 207. And it's worth about 10 questions on your test. That is 10 points coming from one patrol guide section, 207. When you compare that to a section like 212 that has 130 procedures where you get 10, 11 questions, it almost weighs the same, all right? So you don't have the material in front of you, which is fine. I just want you to listen and absorb, okay? The first thing I want to go over is a continuous event. So a continuous event, you're going to see the question on test day. Basically, it's when you have a victim who is taken into one precinct, victimized, brought to another precinct, victimized again, brought to another precinct, victimized again, all right? A continuous event only has one victim. Do not let them fool you with more than one victim. If I rob somebody in a 114 and I leave and I rob somebody in a 75, that is not a continuous event. If I rob that person in a 114 and I take them in my car and I bring them to the 75 and now I rape them, that's a continuous event. One victim. So keep that in your head. So with a continuous event, they can come up with like 4 questions from this long story, all right? They're going to ask you, what should you call the 61? What precinct should give you the 61 number? What the jurisdiction code? And what investigative unit should you refer 61 to for further investigation? Out of one scenario, they can hit you with 4 questions. You're definitely going to get a question on it. I don't know if they'll come with 4, but you need to know the material. And it's not that hard. The rule is, when determining what you call a 61, you go by what? The 7 majors, all right? You're going to have 99% in this scenario, you're going to have a 7 major in there. It's the 7 major, okay? If you don't remember your 7 majors on test day, how can you refresh your memory right off the bat? Exactly. In your in-basket, remember, you're going to have a CompStat report, which lists your 7 majors. But you should know your 7 majors like the back of your hand. The next thing you need to know with a continuous event is what precinct is going to give you the 61 number. That's totally different than what you call the 61 number. So when you determine the precinct that's going to give you the 61 number, you follow a set of rules. It's the same rules in determining what? Hopefully somebody knows it from last week. The jurisdiction code. It's the same rules. So what's the rule? Where this continuous event starts, right? The precedent of origination is giving you the 61 number, and it will be the jurisdiction code, except 3 times. Do you guys and girls remember the exceptions? If you have what? A homicide, rape 1, or a sodomy 1. Yes, I said sodomy. It's really called criminal sexual act. I will use sodomy because it's easier to say and it flows, all right? Now, when those come into play, you have different rules, and they're going to come into play on test day. So what's the rule with that? If you have a homicide, it's recorded where it occurred, okay? Just remember, if you have a homicide mixed with rapes and sodomies, all in one scenario, homicide trumps everything. So wherever the homicide is, that's going to be your answer, okay? So again, if you have a homicide, you record it where it occurred. If the location of occurrence is unknown, then you record it where we found the body. That's the first exception. Now, if you have a rape 1 or a sodomy 1, what happens? You record it where it occurred. If the location of occurrence is unknown, but the location where the initial offense is known, like where it started, then you record it in the precedent of origination. If neither location is known, you record it where the complainant reports the incident. And if you have more than one rape or sodomy which occurred in more than one precinct, you record it where? Where the initial rape or sodomy occurred. So, I am going to give you 2 scenarios which involve a continuous event. Some of you may have seen this already because I did this one class before I went on vacation. But most of you guys and girls I was not here for. So I want you to just go along with this little formula I'm going to have you do to handle a continuous event question. So on the back of today's lesson, just go to the back page and just make this chart for me. It's going to have 3 columns. The first column is going to be titled crime. Second column is going to be titled precinct. Third column is going to be titled jurisdiction. I would show you my chart, but I don't want you to get the answers yet. I want to read a story for you, and you're just going to, as I read this story, you're going to fill in the chart. Just keep going in order as these crimes occur, okay? Now, the first story I'm going to read you, it's actually a question from last week. So whether you did it at home or not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you how you handle it on test day. And the way, this is like continuous event 101 for dummies. And I'm not saying anybody here is a dummy, but if you handle it this way, 99% you're not going to get the question wrong. So here we go. I'm going to read you the story, and I'll tell you what to write. So on Tuesday, June 7, at approximately 14:30 hours, a male white 32 approached a 13-year-old girl inside Van Cortlandt Park within the confines of the 5-0. So right now, did anything happen? No. Nothing to report yet. The male lured the victim into his car and then forced her into the car at gunpoint with a loaded firearm. Now, something happened. So right now, go to your chart. What crime are we going to write? Kidnapping. What's the precinct? 5-0. And what's the jurisdiction code? 00. You all know your jurisdiction code. 00 PSB, 01 transit, and housing is 02. Let's continue with the story. The male drove the victim to a location in the 4-8 and robbed her. Here we go. Next line. Right robbery. For precinct, it's 4-8. For jurisdiction code, it's 00. The male then drove the victim to a secluded section of the Van Cortlandt Park in the confines of the neighboring 4-7. Once parked, the man proceeds to have non-consensual, forcible anal intercourse with the victim. So what do we have right now? We have criminal sexual act sodomy 1 in the 4-7. Jurisdiction code is 00. So when it comes to rape 1 and sodomy 1, they are the same exact thing. Rape is penis to vagina. Sodomy is penis to every other orifice on somebody's body. And on test day, they're not going to use an earlobe or a belly button, all right? They're going to use an anus, most likely, okay? Let's continue with the story. Subsequently, the male drives the victim back to the original location in a 5-0, throws her out of the car. When the victim arrived home, she told her parents what had occurred. The child lives with her family in the confines of the 5-2. When the mother and father bring the victim into the 5-2 station house to report the crime, Sergeant Rosado interviews the victim. The victim states she is certain about the location of the sexual assault. So now here we go. Here's the first question. In accordance with PG blah, 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 regarding the proper recording of this complaint, Sergeant Rosado should know that the complaint should be recorded in what precinct? So let's, before you even look at your chart, pull the rule. When it comes to what I call a 61, what is the rule? 7 majors. It has nothing to do with where it occurred. So you look at your crime column. What do we have? Kidnapping. 7 major? No. Robbery. Yes, it's a 7 major. Then we have a sodomy 1. Is that a 7 major? No. So that answer right there is going to be robbery. You don't have to look at the other columns in your chart when you're answering the question, what do I call a 61? You look at the crime column and look for the 7 major. That's the first question. Second question. After determining the proper jurisdiction of the complaint, Sergeant Rosado must classify the top charge on the complaint report. According to Patrol Guide 20701, Sergeant Rosado should know that the top charge of the complaint report should be, wait a second, did I mess up these questions? Yeah, I did. So let's start over. The 61 is going to be called what? Robbery. The next part of this question is, what is the precinct and what is the jurisdiction code? So what is the rule? The precinct where it started, right? Unless we have a homicide, rape one, or a sodomy one. So where did all this start? If you look at your chart, the 5-0. But do we have a homicide, rape one, or a sodomy one? Yes, we have a sodomy where? In the 4-7. So that's the precinct that is giving you the 61 number. And that's also the factor for determining the jurisdiction code. When they were in the 4-7, it was PSB, 0-0. So that's the way you handle it. Just look at your chart. What a lot of people will jump on is we're calling it a robbery because it's a 7 major. And then if you look where the robbery took place, it was in the 4-8, right? That's what a lot of people will jump on. They'll say it's a robbery with a 4-8 complaint report number. No, it's a robbery with a 4-7 complaint report number. I'm going to read you another one that you definitely didn't have in your book. And just go along and fill in the chart. While you're performing duty as the midnight desk officer in the 123, an irate female complainant runs in and says, I want to speak to the chief. Once you're able to calm her down and you learn the woman's story, the complainant, identified as Ms. Smith, reports that she was walking along Surf Avenue in the confines of the 6-0, stopped to buy water from a local vendor with a $50 bill. A male driving a black Lexus SUV exited his vehicle, forcibly removed the $50 from her hand and ran into his vehicle. What do we have right now? Robbery. So let's go along with the chart. A robbery, what's the precinct? 6-0, jurisdiction code, 0-0. Continuing with the story. Upset at the theft, Ms. Smith gets into the perp's vehicle and demands the money back. The man is startled and gives the woman her money back, but prevents the woman from exiting the vehicle. So now we have kidnapping. So now write kidnapping, 6-0, 0-0. Let's continue. The man then drives off with the woman still in a car. He drives into an abandoned railroad yard in the confines of the 7-2 and has forcible oral intercourse with the woman. So now we have sodomy 1, 7-2 precinct, jurisdiction code of 0-0. Let's continue on. He then continues into a housing development in the confines of the 7-6 and has forcible anal intercourse with her. So here we got another sodomy 1, 7-6, jurisdiction code is 02 for housing. The perp gets spooked, blah, 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 and the story ends. So the reason why I want you to do the chart way, because on test day, the story is most likely going to be a half a page long. And you don't want to keep going back into the story and rereading it. You just fill the chart as each crime occurs. And now let's look at the first question. You don't have it in front of you, but just listen. You would be most correct to ensure that the report is classified as a what? So let me think of the rule. I go by the 7 majors. Which one is a 7 major out of everything that took place? Robbery. So when you answer this question, when they ask you what is the 61 called, you could actually, all you got to do is cover the rest of your sheet and look at the first column. Forget about precinct and jurisdiction when they're asking you what do you classify it as. I look at my column titled crime. The only 7 major I have is robbery. I would circle that. So the answer for that part of the question is robbery. Now, next part. You would be most correct to ensure that the report is recorded in the following precinct with the following jurisdiction code, without even looking at the choices. I don't even have to tell you the choices. What's the rule again for determining the precinct? Where it started, precinct of origination, right? Unless we have a homicide, we don't. A rape one, we don't. Or a sodomy one, we do. And we have 2 of them. When we have 2 of the sex crimes, rape one or sodomy one, what's the rule? Where the first one occurred. So, what's the precinct that's going to give you the number, and what's the jurisdiction code? 72, jurisdiction code 00. That's it. It's so easy. I'm going to put this up there on camera so you guys and girls out there could actually, when you're reviewing the video, you can see it. I'm not going to promise you, but I may make a key essential video with this little chart and the formula I use for your continuous event strategy on test day. Let's say now after he sodomized her twice, he drove somewhere else, and he killed her in transit now in another precinct. What are we calling the 61? Homicide. Jurisdiction is going to be 01 and whatever precinct that is, all right? Remember, homicide trumps everything. That's a continuous event. The other thing I want to go over real quick from last week, because it's probably going to come up on test day, is your separate 61 rule. I'm going to read you the info, and then I'm going to give you examples. So we are to do a separate 61 for each homicide victim. Easy. If I'm a bad guy, I come in here and I kill these 2 ladies on that first table there. I kill both of them. How many 61s? 2. Very easy. Next rule. Each perp of a crime who is killed gets their own. So after I killed them, one of you guys killed me. Now how many 61s we at? How many? 3. Because remember, they're getting their own, and I'm a perp of a crime who was killed. I get my own as well, so now we're at 3. Each person dead, seriously injured, likely to die, or critically injured in a motor vehicle or bicycle collision. Very easy. First thing I want to touch on is critical injury. We are not EMS. We don't determine what a critical injury is. We didn't cover it yet, but it's going to come up later on down the road. Critical injury is determined by EMS, not us. So if you have a van going to Atlantic City and they're on the BQE and they hit this fucking crater because it's full of craters, the van flips over or the bus flips over, 30 people critically injured in that one bus, how many 61s? 30, okay? That's it. It's so easy. So far, the rules are easy. There's going to be one that's going to throw people for a loop. Each victim of a sex offense gets their own. Easy. Each victim of an assault, except if incidental to a sex offense or a robbery, gets their own. This is the one that confuses people, and I'm going to do a few examples in a minute. One more separate 61 rule. Each additional person injured in an arson gets their own 61. So the way to remember arson is you set somebody's apartment on fire, and there's one person in there who is injured because of that arson. They're going to be covered under that 161. The arson allows for one injury. Just remember it that way. Anybody else injured because of that arson you started will get their own 61. So you light that apartment on fire, the person inside is injured, and there's 2 people outside the apartment who are assaulted from the smoke inhalation because you started that arson. How many 61s? 3. The one inside the apartment that falls under the arson, and then those other 2 in the hallway get their own. Now for the one that confuses everybody. And I'm going to give you a formula to remember on test day. So each victim of an assault gets their own 61, except if incidental to a sex offense or a robbery. So, I wish I had students behind me. I can't go over there as I won't be on camera. But let's just say I walk into an elevator, all right, and there are 3 people in the elevator with me. I punch all 3. I assaulted all 3, and I leave. How many 61s? 3. Easy. Each victim of an assault gets their own. Here is where it gets a little confusing, but if you remember the formula I'm going to tell you, you're going to get it right. Each victim of an assault gets their own, except if incidental to a sex offense or a robbery. So I go into that same elevator, and I assault all 3, and I rob one of them, and I leave. How many 61s? 1. I assault all 3, and I rob all 3. How many 61s? 1. Remember this formula. When you have, this is for the separate 61 rule. When you have assaults combined with a robbery or a robberies, your answer is always going to be what? 1. Just remember that. 1. Assault plus robbery or robberies, your answer is always going to be 1. Think about when you're a precinct commander and you're reading 61s, because that's what you're going to do every morning you come to work. You're going to recap everything that took place. You're reading a 61. Somebody went into a house party and assaulted 45 people. When you're a commander, what you want to see is after they were assaulted, 45 people, that at least one person was robbed, because now you went from 45 61s to 1. Again, assaults plus robbery or robberies, always 1. The other part now. Assaults coupled with a sex offense. Here's the formula for that. Determine how many sex offense victims you have. That's going to be your answer. Simple, all right? I go into the elevator again. This time now there's 3 women in there, okay? I assault all 3, and I get a nice squeeze of one of the ladies' ass. How many 61s? How many sex crime victims do I have? 1. That's your answer, okay? Same scenario. I assault all 3 in the elevator, and now I grab 2 different asses. How many victims do we have? 2. That's it. All you got to do is remember those 2 formulas on test day. Assault plus robbery, always 1. Assault plus sex crime victim, assault plus sex crime, the answer is going to be, how many sex crime victims do I have? Whether I have 1 or 7 sex crime victims, your answer will be 1 or 7. Remember those formulas, and you should not have a problem on test day. Now we're going to go into today's lesson, 208, arrest. So this is the first half of 208. Next week we cover the second half. A lot of this stuff should be like second nature to you. But there's going to be some new rules that came into play. So top of page 1. It tells you what's a violation, what's a crime, what's an offense. Obviously, we all should know this going back to academy days. All right, an offense includes felonies, misdemeanors, and violations. Crimes only include felonies and misdemeanors. This is all going back to your academy days. So, talk about making a summary arrest. That's the type of arrest that most of you make on a daily basis, or whenever you do collar up. A summary arrest. What do you need to make a collar? It's either 2 things they're going to say. Probable cause on test day, or the other line that they may use is what? Reasonable cause to believe. Those mean the two same things. So, crimes. What's a crime again? Felony or misdemeanor. Committed in or out of your presence. It says you can collar the person anywhere in New York State. You can even go beyond New York State if you're in close pursuit. Think about those rules and apply it to some scenarios. So, felony or misdemeanor committed in or out of your presence. Let's say you're up in Albany and you see somebody commit a petty larceny, or you don't see them, but you're informed that somebody committed a petty larceny, which is a misdemeanor. Can we collar in Albany? What does it say? Yes, right? In or out of our presence, anywhere in New York State. So now we go to collar this guy in Albany for a fucking petty larceny. He gets in a car, he takes off, and you start following him into Pennsylvania. You're in close pursuit for this fucking petty larceny. Can you collar him in Pennsylvania according to this? Yes, you can. I'll tell you right now, in reality, don't fucking chase anybody into another state for a petty larceny, right? You better, nowadays, don't do shit. I can say that because I'm retired, but that's the way the job is actually going, okay? But on test day, you can, if you're in close pursuit, you can leave the state line and make the collar. Now, for violations like somebody urinating in public, what's the rules with that to effect a summary arrest? Has to be committed in your presence, first factor. Second factor, and in your geographical area of employment. Everybody in the room should know what their GAOE is. If you don't, go home. And I'll see you in 3 years, all right? I shouldn't even have to go further with that. So, for a violation in your presence and in your GAOE, you can arrest in the county of occurrence or adjoining counties. Going beyond the adjoining county if you're in close pursuit, but you cannot leave the state. Those are the rules. Just apply the rules on test day if they give you a scenario, okay? So if you want to lock somebody up for urinating in public, you had to observe it, and it had to be within the 5 boroughs of New York City, okay? Those are the 2 factors that have to be met. Now, making collars with a warrant. The warrant has to be addressed to one of us or somebody else in the NYPD. If the warrant is issued by, it breaks it down into separate courts. The first bullet, I remember them as the big courts. If the warrant's issued by a New York City criminal court, a district court, or superior court judge sitting in a lower court, you can collar anytime, anywhere in New York State. Now, if it's issued by the little courts, CTV is the acronym I still remember in my head from studying years ago. So that's a city court, except New York City, town court, village court. Now, what's the collar policy? Collar anytime, but only in the county of issuance or adjoining county. And it talks about the whole city is our geographical area of employment, in case you didn't know that. Next procedure. Arrest, removal to department facility. This is when you make a collar out there in the street. AO, be tactical and safe, inform perp of authority and cause unless they resist, flee, or it's impractical. Common sense. Ascertain if a child is present using all available info. Speak to radio, indicators at the scene, blah, blah, blah. So you see all these sub-bullets now? This is all new from the last exam. So basically, we don't want to traumatize somebody's kid or somebody's relative when we're locking up a parent or guardian, all right? We don't want that kid to have a bad taste of the NYPD. So this is, all these sub-bullets are here to make this child feel more comfortable. I don't think they would ask it, but let's read through it because it's new. So if you arrest a parent or guardian outside of a child's sight and hearing, if possible. So they don't want you to actually do the cuffing in front of the kid, but if it has to happen, it has to happen. It's saying if possible. Only display your firearm. I'm going to call it a taser. We know it's not officially a taser no more because that sounds fucking too vicious, all right? Your firearm or a taser only display in child sight when necessary and consistent with department policy and officer safety, because this may traumatize them, so reassure the child as soon as possible. Make every effort to avoid the use of force to separate a child from their parent or guardian. If you didn't experience it, you're going to experience it when you lock up one of these parents. The kid is going to grab their leg. All right? Now we have to try and be the kinder, gentler police department. Permit parent or guardian to speak to child prior to transport. If not practical, explain using age-appropriate language that the parent or guardian will be safe, child did nothing wrong, and will be safe and cared for. Allow the kid to take a familiar object, like a teddy bear, etc. We go through a lot of steps to make this kid feel good, all right? Ascertain the child's medical, behavior, psych conditions, and get required medication. If child present or not, let the parent or guardian choose the babysitter as long as the babysitter is not a drug addict or dangerous to the child. Assist the parent or guardian getting numbers out of their mobile phone to arrange for care of the child. If an alternative cannot be identified or can't respond in a reasonable time, you're going to comply with 21501. That's a procedure way down the line we're going to cover when we cover juvies. After arrest and prior to arraignment in criminal court, offer to make a referral to a partner organization for services to the child. If they consent, make referral and put the offer and response in your digital activity log. Next page. I would highlight this bullet. Anytime I see body-worn cameras now, I would definitely pay attention. Immediately inquire if medical or psych treatment is necessary and ensure your body-worn camera is activated when asking. Request EMS as appropriate. Handcuff prisoner with hands behind the back. This is somewhat new now, the sub-bullet. Rear cuff, even if pregnant, absent exceptional circumstances like there's a medical emergency, visibly pregnant, and difficult to rear cuff, or they pose no immediate threat, notify immediate supervisor and follow 21001. 21001 is going to be a procedure in prisoners when they're going to the hospital. Notify, highlight, immediate supervisor of arrest, and provide pertinent details. That's what it says in here. When you have a collar, who are you notifying? Immediate supervisor. They can easily swap that actor out with patrol sergeant. Now, the patrol sergeant on test day in reality may be your immediate supervisor, right? But just remember, the book says immediate supervisor is who gets notified when you have a collar. Now, here's the next actor, immediate supervisor. Respond as appropriate and designate a UMOS to get name, rank, tax, command of uniform members present at the scene and have them ascertain if those uniform members have body-worn cameras and if the cameras were activated. Direct all UMOS on scene, forward their digital activity log entries to the AO. I would highlight that too. These steps right here, these two bullets, all new stuff from the last set of exams. Now we're back to you as the AO. Bring your collar to the arrest facility. If it's a juvie, they're going to a room specific for interrogation, and the list of those rooms can be found in two places, in the command library or by calling the juvie desk. Tell the desk officer of the charges and if force was used to effect the arrest. Immediately upon arrival at the command, complete captions on the prisoner pedigree card and give it to the desk officer. Remain with the prisoner at all times unless relieved by the APO. Now, we didn't cover it yet, but I just want to throw it out there because you're going to need to know it. Failure to safeguard a prisoner on test day is what type of command discipline? It's a B command discipline. So right here, we're telling you stay with the prisoner. And if you can't, you get relief, APO. On test day, if you leave that prisoner in a cell, unattended, in a hospital bed, unattended, that is considered failure to safeguard on test day. Don't think the prisoner has to actually escape. If they are unattended, it's considered failure to safeguard. On test day, that would be a B command discipline, and you can lose up to 10 days. In the box, this is also new. For booking purposes, write the name and gender you're going to get from their ID, whether it's a license, permit, non-driver, photo ID. But we have to go along with the whole new times we're dealing with. If they have a preferred name, you lock me up and my ID says George, but I want to be called Georgina, for whatever fucking reason, this is what you have to do on test day. So if they have a preferred name, it goes in 3 places. On the prisoner movement slip, in the defendant's name section, and you're going to preface it by preferred name. Where else does it go? Nickname, alias, maiden name box on the online, prefaced by the letter P with a dash, and on the prisoner pedigree card. So preferred names go in 3 places. They go in the POP. If you want a little acronym, as I'm reading this, I see you can do POP. Back to the desk officer duty. Have the AO prepare pedigree card above like they were supposed to, and immediately put that info into the command log. File pedigree card by date and time of arrival in command. Put the time of arrival of the AO and assisting MOS in the command log entry. Interrupt the patrol log, and on the roll call, highlight the next bullet. Determine validity of the arrest. Void the arrest if it's not valid, and notify CO duty captain if we made an off-duty arrest. So just let's think about that duty for the desk officer right there. When you collared somebody in the street, who did you notify? What actor? Immediate supervisor. I would think that immediate supervisor, when he or she responds, should be determining the validity of the arrest. No, on test day, it's not mentioned at all. Bring the perp into the house, and it's the desk officer duty to determine the validity. If it's not a good collar, we're going to void it. If it's a collar by an off-duty member of the service, notify CO duty captain. Next bold bullet. Direct the AO to thoroughly search the prisoner in your presence, and we're going to talk about search rules in a few minutes. If the prisoner is wearing a religious head covering, comply with 208-83, which is going to be covered in a few minutes as well. Verify ID by some good proof that you believe. Government issued ID. AO inform them that knowingly lying regarding their date of birth, their name, or their address intentionally is a B misdemeanor. Ensure the prisoner is afforded reasonable opportunity to acquire ID. Next page. We're still on desk officer duty. Count the perp's money, enter the amount in the command log, and return to prisoner. If they're not getting a DAT, the perp can keep 100 or less. Anything more than 100 must be vouchered. Enter the amount kept and the voucher number for the rest in the command log. So I would highlight that first part of that bullet. On test day, who counts the money? The desk officer. But in reality, I'm sure you experienced it. You go to the desk and you are the one counting the money in front of the desk officer. Test day, no. The boss counts it. We don't want you stealing any money. Just think of it like that, okay? Direct the AO to remove prisoner to arrest processing area or juvie room. Direct the APO, that's arrest processing officer, to assist the AO, and direct AO to remain with prisoner at all times unless relieved by the APO. Ensure the AO signs the affidavit supporting DEP before resuming assignment or completing tour. If prisoner is placed alone in a cell for any reason, the desk officer must ensure a member of the service monitors the prisoner closely. If a potential arrestee acts irrational or violently resists and is confined and unarmed, we will then treat them as an EDP, which is going to be a whole procedure when we cover 216, where you're going to get the sergeant and ESU. Attempt to isolate, contain. If they're in a car, it tells you block them with one or more RMPs. Always goes to the hospital. I would highlight that. If we're giving them a DAT and they show distress or would face harm without immediate medical care, no DAT. We have the whole DAT procedure in today's lesson. You got to love this next box. And if anybody in here is in narco, you'll see what I'm talking about. You go to lock somebody up, and they throw the crack cocaine in their mouth. What do you do? In reality, what we used to do was punch them right to the throat. I was in narco 4 years. A lot of throat punching went on. And then what would happen? They would spit it up. No good. And by the way, statute of limitations is way gone. I was in narcotics in like 1999 or some shit. So I'm not worried about assaulting any prisoners. So on test day, if they swallow the drugs, 3 things. Promptly tell the patrol sergeant and central as soon as you observe them swallowing the drugs, when transport to the hospital begins, and when you are 84 at the hospital. So we were never bringing them to the house if they swallow drugs, all right? We don't want, you remember this, just as we read arrest, we do not want anybody dying in a fucking RMP or in a precinct. Let them die in a hospital, all right? We are not doctors. So just remember that's a rule that applies with arrest. And then when you get to the hospital, inform EMS and hospital personnel of the type and quantity of drugs that were ingested. All right, the actual arrest processing now. Let's take a quick 5-minute break, and we're going to start with arrest processing. All right, I want you guys and girls to be nice and fresh. In a patrol guide, there's probably double the amount of pages. I mean, it's about 5-6 pages here of what's supposed to be done when you come in the house with a collar, from step 1 till the end. So here we go. AO, immediately field search, frisk prisoner, and adjacent vicinity. We're going to talk about the 3 types of searches after we do this procedure. If the arrestee surrenders at a police facility, the AO may request from their immediate supervisor to not use cuffs. After the AO and the boss consider a potential threat to the AO, other prisoners, or anybody else, and escape potential. So just look at that line. It sounds very easy to understand, yes. But think about the scenario. Prisoner comes in and voluntarily surrenders. He's inside the precinct. Who are you asking permission not to use cuffs? What would be the logical answer? Right there. Yeah, he's in front of the fucking desk. No, but the answer is not desk officer on test day. It's immediate supervisor, but again, it could be the same person on test day, but you have to go with what the actor is called, who it's called, immediate supervisor. If you're going to interrogate the perp, then you got to read the Miranda warnings. We know the rules for that, all right? Custody plus interrogation equals Miranda. If we got a juvie, highlight, you're notifying 2 people. Real-time crime center, juvie desk 24/7, and parent guardian immediately. Truancy is not normally charged, but if we have a collar on another charge, we can add truancy to the online, and we also may frisk and cuff. If the perp of a parent or guardian of a juvie appears to have difficulty understanding or communicating in English, or to be hearing impaired, comply with 212.90, which is language line, or 212.104 as appropriate. Those procedures will be in 212 weeks down the road. Top of the next page. Now we're switching actors. We're going to the desk officer now. Immediately determine if the perp is high escape risk by interviewing and doing background checks. If so, highlight, assign to UMOS. Factors to consider if the high escape risk: seriousness of the crime, unwilling to identify themselves, forcibly resisted, has a history or has made threats of violence, escape, weapons, warrant, and criminal history checks. Particularly the DOS to see past police contacts. Now, something is also fairly new here. If we have a resisting recidivist, if charge is resisting, assault 2 sub 3, which is intend to stop you guys and girls from doing your job, assault on a peace officer, EMS, FD, or aggravated assault on a PO or peace officer, ensure criminal history check is done. If we have prior of the above in the past 5 years, they are now considered a resisting recidivist. Ensure resisting recidivist arrests are enhanced by the squad and that the DA makes a real effort to prosecute. If we have an issue with mobility, speech, hearing, mental disability, use appropriate aid and make reasonable attempts to notify a relative or friend, but the AO or uniformed member investigating documents the notification attempts. Have non-evidence vehicle or conveyance safeguarded if appropriate. Question the AO on the use of force if it applies. Note the perp's physical mental condition in the command log. Ensure any medical or psych treatment is acquired if need be. If prisoner is transported to or escapes from a hospital, direct the AO to immediately notify Health and Hospitals Corporation Police, or if they're not available, hospital security. So now they're going to throw you with a line that comes out of 210, which deals with prisoners. However, when the desk officer has the AO request a secure location for prisoners, that request is not made to those two above entities. It's made to emergency room staff. And that line will be covered again when we hit 210. Next bullet, was already covered? It's here again, highlight. If we have an off-duty collar, notify CO duty captain. If they're from another agency, that agency will be notified. CO duty captain do not read their duties. Desk officer continued. Direct the AO to thoroughly search the perp in your presence, and we're going to cover that in detail in a few. Direct the AO to ask if the perp has any uncared for dependents and make a command log entry with the results. And if there is a kid or somebody left in the house, we have to follow 21501, which is way down the road, like I said earlier. Top of the next page. The desk officer has the following property removed. Unlawful property evidence, obviously, we're going to vouch it at. Lawfully carried, but dangerous or would facilitate escape, or deface or damage property, or it could be used to attempt suicide or commit suicide or assault somebody. So the desk officer has that removed. The one thing that always stuck out in my head was like deface, damage property. That could be like a pen or a marker. This is all arrest 101. Hopefully you don't let perps go into cells with any of that stuff, all right? Do these items get vouchered? Here it says the patrol guide is not clear. These could be nail clippers, magic markers, shoelaces, but if they're considered prisoners' personal property, then voucher it. So on test day, they're going to have to say you removed a nail clipper or a pen, and they're considering it prisoners' personal property. That would equal vouchering, okay? But if they don't say that, now we follow the next sub-bullet. If temporarily removed but not held in police custody, you will give them an itemized receipt. If they're intox or unconscious, take personal property other than clothing, like their ID, debit, credit card, etc. Yes, we are going to take that and we're going to voucher it because obviously they can't care for it themselves. We don't want it to get lost or stolen. Legal medication, including methadone, voucher for safekeeping, highlight, even if we are giving the guy or girl a DAT or voiding the collar. It's getting vouchered. It's going in a plastic security envelope. Give the perp. The prisoner find or own a copy as a receipt of the voucher. Make medical treatment or prisoner form to alert detention facility when they get transported downtown. And return to OTA if released on a DAT, you're voiding the arrest. Otherwise, you send that to the property clerk as usual. So don't let them get you with this medication that's prescribed. Even if we are letting them go on a DAT, in reality, you probably don't voucher it. You just hold it, and when they get released, you give it right back to them. On test day, if you're giving them a DAT, you are vouchering that stuff. And then when you're done with the DAT, now you got to follow the procedure in 218, which is returning property to the owner. NYPD issued documents. These are considered department property. You do not voucher unless it's evidence. But you have to remove it. But you're not vouchering it. It's going to go somewhere, most likely with a 49. So what are they talking about? ID card of a retired uniformed member from Transit Housing or NYPD. And you collar them. You take the ID card. It gets forwarded to the Human Resource Division with a report of facts. That is a 49 in different terms, okay? Auxiliary, police PD shield, civil defense shield, ID. Where's that going? Makes sense. Auxiliary police section with a report of facts. That next one, cross out. The whole NYPD issued press card, cross it out. That was actually just changed with an interim order that came out in February after this lesson was already printed. So that's why I'm telling you to make the change now. That doesn't exist anymore. And the lesson, anytime something changes, after it's printed, we will upload the most current change into our COPS system of the lesson plan so you have the most current change. We can't change everybody's material in front of you because you already have it. So we will tell you about the change, and the lesson will be in COPS with the change. Handgun license or rifle shotgun permit, we're going to take it, and we're going to forward it to the CO of the license division, regardless of the charge. Now we got a whole procedure that's going to appear again in 212. I'm not going to read that now because we didn't cover it. Underneath the box, desk officer, ask if the perp wants us to safeguard anything we did not take in the above step. And we're going to make a command log entry with the voucher number if we're safeguarding it, or we're going to write refusal if there is nothing they want us to safeguard. I would highlight that bullet as well. That is something we never used to have in the book. It's there now. Next page. Now we're going from desk officer to back to the AO. Request assistance from the squad, and here's an acronym for you if you have one of the following: a bird collar, unusual crime, a robbery, a grand larceny, a homicide, an assault, with a serious assault, and or a serious crime. Prepare arrest documents as necessary. Give the complainant name of the perp, charges, your name as the AO, precinct of occurrence, invoice number, location of court. Next one, I always stressed regarding phone calls. Advise the prisoner who is 18 or older, they are allowed to make 3 phone calls at no charge. 1 call anywhere in the U.S. or Puerto Rico, and then the other 2 anywhere in New York City. You will end the call or don't allow it if the call is going to defeat the ends of justice or is dangerous. This is common sense. Let them call to check on the status and well-being of their child. AO, you will make the call if the perp is incapacitated by alcohol or drugs. AO, call a request, a sign language interpreter, or telecommunication relay service to assist. If the call is to a person with hearing or speech disability, it says dial 711 for your TRS operator. Now go to the little box on the right regarding these phone calls. Where are we documenting phone calls? Calls are not documented in the telephone record or command log. The desk officer will ensure calls or refusal are on the online booking worksheet and entered into Omni. You guys and girls do that when you collar? Do you actually have that written on the online if they made phone calls? I would say if they made phone calls, yes. But the refusal part, do you write they refused? Maybe you do it anyway because you say, fuck it, I'm not even asking them if they want to make a phone call, right? This is stuff that we probably don't do on a routine basis. But on test day, you got to know it, okay? Whole box here dealing with cell phones. I'm not going to waste time on that. I'm not saying don't read it. There's a lot of important stuff I want to get to in this lesson. Go to the next page. Still on AO. Notify relative or friend 3 times. Anytime you see a list, easy question to write. If the perp is less than 19, you got to notify relative or friend. Admitted to a hospital, notify relative or friend. Or unsound mind, EDP, notify relative or friend. First, try to telephone the relative or friend. The desk officer makes a command log entry of the notification, name, address, relationship, and if unable to notify, then the AO notifies the squad, missing persons, and does a missing person report. So here is one of those other times when we are making telephone notifications and it's not going in the telephone record. It's going here in the command log. And on the prior page, when we talked about the perp making phone calls, refusal or not, that did not go in the telephone record or command log. That went on the online. And I know I said it from day one. Try to remember the times when we are making notifications or receiving notifications that do not go in the telephone record, because that's what that's going to be our default answer, telephone record, when we make notification. Comply with 214.07, cases for legal action, if it applies. Basically, that's when we're going to try and throw people out of housing if they commit a crime. We're going to cover that in 214 when we get to that down the road. You're going to run a DOL check through Finest for GLA collars or plates or altered VINs. Comply with 208.72, obtain prisoner DNA if they owe DNA for inclusion in the New York State DNA databank, and then deliver the paperwork to the desk officer. So here is all the paperwork now that goes along with the collar. I'm not going to go through each piece of paper. This is all common sense, and you do it every day. There's no tricks in here, all right? The one thing I want to add, though, is on page 7, where it says medical treatment of prisoner form. We will cover it in 210, but there is 5 times we have to prepare a medical treatment of prisoner form, obviously PERP. The acronym that will apply for those 5 times is CRAMP. If the prisoner has a cramp, CRAMP. Those are the 5 times. Apply it here. I'll give you the acronym on the break if you want me to break it down for you, but I don't want to waste time with it now. But just write the acronym down, because that's a good one that requires a medical treatment of prisoner form. Let's go to page 9. (208.04). So the rest of that procedure was just dealing with all the paperwork. Nothing tricky in there, not hard stuff. Arrest by a civilian. It does happen. You have this one person that's always sitting out there on your block, and they happen to lock somebody up, all right? Legally, a civilian cannot make an arrest for a violation. UMOS, you, the cops, determine the probable cause for the arrest or any related offense. Bring the prisoner and the civilian, who is that buff on the block who made the collar, to the station house. Desk officer, determine validity. If not lawful, you're going to follow voided release of prisoner procedure, which is in 210. You will assign a uniformed member to process the arrest, but ensure the civilian is recorded as having made the arrest. Determine if the assigned member cannot complete arrest processing within their tour, and have uniformed member continue processing, but request relief prior to end of tour. So we don't want you to get overtime for this collar that you didn't even make, basically. UMOS, prepare paperwork, give to relieving officer, inform relieving officer of details of the arrest. Relieving officer, enter details of arrest in activity log, and ensure civilian complainant appears in court if necessary. Top of the next page. I don't know if you can see this. I have all kinds of green going on, red writing. This has come up almost on every exam. The different types of searches regarding perps. All right, 208.05, general search guidelines. There are 3 types of search. We have the first one, frisk, field search. Then we have a police facility. Then we have a strip search. So let's start with number 1. The frisk field search. Immediately after apprehension, it could be before or after cuffing the perp. It's a methodical external body examination which is made by sliding your hands over the body, feeling for weapons, objects with special attention to the waistband, armpit, collar, groin areas. Unusual objects are removed. Highlight, highlight, highlight. Gender does not matter here. And I seen them mix this up on test day. The search, right when you collar somebody, gender does not matter. I saw on a test where it was female cops locked somebody up and they requested sect the boy because there was a male in the assigned to sect the boy to come search the male perp the females had. No good. Gender does not matter for that field frisk search, all right? So again, don't let them fool you. This search, it tells you to check waistband, armpit, collar, groin areas. Yes, groin areas. Remember, gender does not matter. Do not let them trip you up. Now, we're at the house. Now it's a little different. Here are the police facility search rules. It's a search of the person and clothing, same gender as defendant. It's a removal of outer garments permitted, including wigs, ties, shoes, socks, wallets, and handbags. This is new now. They added into the next part. If the arrestee, your perp, has a mobility disability requiring a wheelchair or a scooter, rear cuff in the seat, frisk the lower body by sliding the hands up each leg and under the buttocks, palms up. For the device itself, like the wheelchair, slide your hands palms down under the butt and over accessible areas. Then transport, I would highlight this, the arrestee to an ADA compliant precinct. Americans with Disabilities Act. Never was this ever in the patrol guide. Once we're in the house, if they use a wheelchair or a limb or a crutch, ask if it's safe to remove and for consent. Good luck with that. I don't want to be taking somebody's fake leg off, but this is what you have to do nowadays. If consent is given, identify as appropriate seating area to move the arrestee for a thorough search. Thoroughly search the device, including all attachments and compartments. If they consent, but they're unable to lift themselves out of the chair or remove the device, highlight, call EMS to assess. EMS will assist with the search or remove the arrestee to a hospital as necessary. When you're done, return device as long as it's safe to do so. You can also use a handheld metal detector. If not safe to return device, comply with 21008, which we'll cover when we do prisoners. And they should be lodged in an ADA compliant cell. Slide over to that little box on the right. Contact legal if mobility disability arrestee refuses to be searched. That's a great test question. They have the fake leg and they don't want you to search them. Who do you contact? Don't go to the desk officer. Don't go to the immediate supervisor. Don't go to the ADA. You are going to contact the legal bureau. Next one, strip search. Not all the time, all right? Any search where undergarments, bra, underwear, etc., and or private areas are exposed or clothing is removed, lifted up, or pulled down to expose undergarments or private areas. Now, motivation. Remember I told you week one, you have to stick something in your head why you want to get promoted, why you want to pass this test. Hopefully you also have something in your head. This was one of the reasons why I wanted to get promoted. Like I said, I was in narco, and you'd bring 10 collars in a night, and all the time, what do you do in narco? Strip search. I was tired of looking at dick and balls every night. Besides that, I had a perp who I said, take your underwear off, because he was getting strip searched, and he said no. in 1999, I had hair, I was a lot bigger, and I was more fucking violent. I said, you gotta take your shit off, or I'm gonna come in and take it off. He took it off. Now, it was already getting heated, and the boss was behind me. I was a detective, the sergeant was there. He took his fucking underwear off, and he flung it at me. Thank God I was wearing gloves, and I was quicker back then, but when I caught it, all kinds of fucking shit, not shit, but lint and all kinds of stuff was flying off his underwear. That was to myself, I said, I'm not doing this fucking shit no more. I want to be behind, like where the sergeant was, and watch you guys do the strip search. Again, something to motivate you, because there's more and more material coming your way. That was my motivation. So back to strip searching. Authority. It's not routine, only with knowledge and approval of the AO's, highlight, immediate supervisor, or the borough court section supervisor if it's going to be done downtown at borough court. The AO must describe the factual basis for the request to the above supervisor. The approving supervisor is responsible for ensuring the strip search is conducted properly. No strip search will be conducted once a decision is made to void the arrest or release the perp on a summons. I would highlight that. If we're voiding or giving them a summons, no strip search. Let me ask you this. What about if we're D18 them? What do you think? Does it say anything about DAT here? No. So yes, you can strip search, okay? But if we are voiding or giving them a summons, no strip search. And we will not do another strip search unless we have reasonable belief the subject acquired a weapon or contraband after our first strip search. Top of the next page. This is a great test question that was asked in the past. If there's a disagreement, the music is going on upstairs, so I have to bring the cursing down. There's probably a funeral going on. If there's a disagreement between the desk officer and the AO supervisor from the outside command who approved the strip search, the desk officer will notify the precinct, PSA, or district CO duty captain who will make the final decision. So think about that. Let's make a scenario. You're an SRG, you go make a collar. We're just going to make the precinct up 114. You go in there. The SRG supervisor says, you are going to strip search your prisoner, because he is the one that gives you permission. The desk officer, the 114 desk officer says, no, I don't want him or her strip search. We're assuming they're both the same rank here, all right, sergeants. So now where they went on a prior test, because it could be a little confusing when you start reading the choices, is who notifies the CO duty captain. They had the choices look good. One notification was done by that 114 desk. Another choice had the SRG supervisor. Just think about this. Do you want to be the one to call a CO duty captain to anything? Most likely not, okay? So, this is the way you should remember it. The person who has the fucking problem with the boss who said strip search, you have the problem, you go tell the CO duty captain that you don't agree with my decision as a boss to have the perp strip searched. Please do not let them get you with that. It's the AO's immediate supervisor who determines. So the SRG boss says, yes, strip search. The desk officer says no. You have a problem, desk officer? You fucking bother the duty captain who's probably sitting in a lounge right now that has to come out and mediate this bullshit, all right? And then it's a CO duty captain who will make the final decision. Justification for a strip search. The AO must articulate reasonable suspicion that the perp may be concealing weapon, evidence, or contraband in such a manner that previous search methods did not discover. Reasonable suspicion has to be beyond the reasonable cause or probable cause we had for the initial collar. Other factors to take into consideration for a strip search. Nature of the crime. Is it a serious violent felony? Arrest circumstances. Subject's reputation. Acts of violence. Unaccounted hit on a magnetometer or metal detector. And discovery of info from previous searches of the perp or others arrested with him or her. Where do we document the strip search? It's going to be in 4 different places. First place, command log. What goes in the command log? Rank, name, and command of the supervisor authorizing the search and of the MOS performing the search. I would highlight that because the first part we're going to remember, the boss who authorized the search. But the second part, what's going in the command log? The MOS performing the search. Don't let them say AO, because the AO may not be doing the search depending on the gender, okay? So they can get a little tricky with that. So the answer is member performing the search. Now, it could be the AO on test day, but if they could whack it up on test day and have somebody else doing the search. So it's not the AO, it's the member doing the search in the command log. What else goes in there? Name of prisoner, basis for the search, and results, including negative results. If the gender of the officer assigned to conduct the search differs from the gender requested by the perp, the desk officer or supervisor supervising the search shall make a detailed entry in the command log regarding the factors considered in assigning a member to conduct the search and identity of the uniformed member who actually conducts the search. Second spot we document, narrative of the online. The supervisor authorizing the search will ensure the command or command log page number of the entry will be documented in the narrative section of the online. Next spot, it goes in activity log. And the last spot, prisoner movement slip detention alert section. The desk officer will direct the AO to prepare activity log entry with info from the command log entry. And on the prisoner movement slip, you're going to write strip searched with command and command log page number in detention alert section. What actually goes in the entry, I highly doubt they're really going to get that petty on test day, but I would definitely know the 4 places that we document a strip search, all right? Now, how is it done? In a secure area, in the utmost privacy, and it should not be necessary to touch the body, but it says we may touch their hair. Top of the next page. Gender privacy. If the gender is not apparent or arrestee objects to the gender of uniformed member searching, the desk officer or supervisor supervising the search assigns uniformed member of the gender requested consistent with UMOS safety and availability. So we may entertain the perp's request to have whatever gender they want searching them, as long as nobody's safety is placed in danger, all right? And we'll make a detailed command log entry if the gender of the officer assigned differs from that requested by the arrestee. Only uniformed members reasonably necessary to conduct the search should be present. Whatever that number is. On test day, it shouldn't be 10 people watching a strip search get conducted, all right? Reasonable number. Under, highlight, highlight, highlight. No circumstances shall uniformed members conduct searches for the purpose of determining the gender, nor ask questions about arrestees' anatomy without reasonable basis for asking. And the last part of this is a cavity search. Under no conditions, highlight, 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 shall a body cavity search be conducted by any of us. We never do a body cavity search. So, if pursuant to a strip search, an object is visually detected in a body cavity, what do? Immediately notify the desk officer. So just think about this whole scenario we started with. SRG. It's the SRG's boss to say, hey, you could strip search that collar. Now, during the strip search, the guy is bending over, right? Bending over on camera, and the bag of fucking crack with 20 vials is sticking out his asshole. Who do you notify? The desk officer. Don't go back to immediate supervisor. And don't pull the fucking thing out on test day either, okay? Object will not be removed without a search warrant. And once the warrant's obtained, You must seek assistance of a medical professional in order to remove it. Has anybody ever experienced this? I did, as a captain, and it was pretty eye-opening, awakening. So, clearly, the perp had something up his ass. And I don't know whether it was crack, whatever it was. The SNU cops back then in the A3 were determined, yes, I saw it. It was hanging out his ass, and he won't take it out. So what do you have to do? You have to get a search warrant. So you get a search warrant. So this is what happens. And this should teach you a little something. The bottom line is you want to get that out of the guy's ass or girl's ass. Somehow. They need to get it out. Because you know what happened? You got a search warrant. Now guess what happens? They give the perp laxatives. And maybe they give you a fucking bedpan if the cell doesn't have a toilet bowl. Now, this perp in the A3 was in that cell for like 3 days shitting. Well, he didn't shit for 3 days. But every time he shit, guess what the cop had to do? Yeah, you had to go digging or whatever he or she did. You had to go in there and see, where's the crack? And you know the sad part? Never crack came out this guy's ass. So I don't know what the cops saw, but the bottom line, in real life, you don't want to go through that. Because you won't be sitting on him for 3 days, but for quite a few hours, when that shit kicks in and it starts dumping out, it's going to be your job to fucking look at the chocolate pudding or whatever, the chocolate diarrhea, all right? So bottom line, we don't take it out. We got to get a search warrant. And once we get a search warrant, look what it says, medical professional will remove it. Next procedure. This is a new procedure in 208. Religious head coverings with the collars. So we're going to go through a few definitions first. What is a religious head covering for this procedure? Appears to be related to a sincerely held religious belief, or that prisoner advised is related to such. And the examples they have: yarmulke, wig, turban, burqa. We all know what a religious head covering is going to be on test day. Whether they call it one of those or they just say religious head covering, I don't think you're going to have a problem with that. What's considered oval of the face definition? Forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, chin, and jawline. Uncovered photos will be taken at the borough court section with the cover removed in private by a member of the service of the same gender with reasonable suspicion that the perp has distinguishing features not otherwise fully visible that is of investigative value to the current arrest or investigation, or was arrested outside their residence and they were not wearing the cover. Prisoner must be searched for weapons and contraband, and photographs must be taken. AO. Inform the perp the cover must be temporarily removed and searched. Advise it will be done in private by the same gender. Search for weapons or contraband. You can use a handheld metal detector if available. Top of the next page. Highlight, highlight, highlight. So you have a perp with a religious head covering. Do not remove it for safekeeping like we did with the belts, shoelace, neckties, pen, markers. Remember we covered earlier, okay? Unless we have an articulable reason based on facts then known to you, the AO, that the cover is likely to be dangerous to life and can be used to harm themselves or others, and permission from the desk officer to retain it when consistent with personal safety and safety of prisoner. I don't know, if I'm writing a question on this new procedure, your antennas should be up. It's coming right here, what we just said, and desk officer duty. Approve or disapprove the removal and retention for safekeeping or evidence. Provide temporary cover when removing and retaining cover for safekeeping or evidence if necessary. And it says voucher as evidence if there's reasonable suspicion the cover is material to the investigation. And then make a command log entry with the reason if done for safekeeping or if you disapproved the request. Now the actual photographing. Do we have the cover on or do we have the cover off? Let's see what it says. AO, take photo with cover on, ensure oval of the face, which we already said what that's considered, eyes, nose, mouth, etc., is visible. Covers that obscure the oval of the face may be removed to expose the oval of the face. We will not take any uncovered photos unless reasonable suspicion of distinguishing features not otherwise fully visible with the head cover in place that is of investigative value to the current investigation or arrest, or reasonable suspicion they committed the crime outside their residence while not wearing it. So if you lock them up and they're not wearing it, and when we're back at the house and now they have it on, but when we initially collared them, maybe they had it in their pocket. If they weren't wearing it, now you want to play the game that you can't take it off? No, we're taking a picture with it off. That's what it's saying right there, okay? If, highlight, if you must take an uncovered photo, look what you have to do. Transport the perp to the borough court section where it will be done in a private area, same gender. Uncovered photo will not be taken at the command of arrest. There's so many easy questions to formulate right here out of this whole cover. I can't see them not asking it. It's a new procedure. Let's continue now with desk officer duties. If uncovered photo must be taken, notify the borough court section supervisor. Make a command log entry, not telephone record, make a command log entry and name of the borough court section supervisor notified. Inform the borough court section of the gender. Direct AO or escorting cop to transport the borough court section as necessary to complete the arrest processes. And the remaining steps are for the borough court section, which we tell you you don't need to study them, which is in your guide. So speaking of the guide, you should only be studying sergeant police officer duties. When I say sergeant, I'm talking about patrol sergeant, desk officer, NCO sergeant, all right? These, like borough court section, aviation sergeant, operations unit supervisor, you don't study their duties. We're talking about the regular sergeant actors. That's why it's not there, right? Additional data. Every effort should be made not to prolong detention beyond what is necessary to take official department photo while accommodating the perp's sincerely held religious beliefs. You may seek help of clergy or interpreter if appropriate to help the perp understand the need to remove the cover. Questions or additional guidance, who do you go to? Legal Bureau. Next page. Arrest security measures. Upon delivery of defendant to detention facility or pre-arraignment, your detention alert section of the prisoner movement slip has to indicate the following if it actually happened, all right? Strip searched. We have a special category perp. We need to separate defendants. They resisted. They attempted to escape, suicide or attempt, dangerous or threatening behavior. Now the actor can be you, the AO, you, the assigned, or the investigating officer. Notifies the borough court section supervisor of any of the above circumstances. What if we lock up two people together and we need to separate them? What do we do? It depends on why we are going to separate them. So, first scenario, we're separating them because confidential reasons. Perp 1 is going to rat out Perp 2. What do we do? How do we document it? The AO will enter his name and phone number on the prisoner movement slip. That is it. You don't write Perp 1 is going to give up Perp 2. That's all you write right there. Now, if we're going to separate them for other reasons, whatever, they're just going to go at it, they're going to beat the shit out of each other in the cells. What do? Enter arrest number and name of the other perp. Now we will write the reason why we're separating them, and we'll notify the borough court section supervisor. Enter that information on your movement slip. Bring info to the attention of the court section personnel for entry on the courthouse generated movement slip. Prisoner transport. with a perp. They're going in RMP, and it says both MOS check the back seat before and after transport. That box on the right, 21207, cross it out. This is another procedure that was removed from the patrol guide after we had this lesson printed. So when we have a collar, both MOS check the back seat before and after transport. Always transport the perp in the rear seat. Operator and recorder will be in the front seat, but there's one exception. If your RMP has no partition, then we have to have a cop in the back seat. And the cop in the back seat sits behind the operator. Double lock the cuffs. Seatbelt perps in non-emergency situations. When's the last time you put a seatbelt on a perp? I don't know. Non-emergency, we're supposed to seatbelt the perp in. And while the seatbelt is being secured, your partner goes on the other side of the RMP with the door open to assist if necessary. Operator and recorder will be present upon entry and exit from the vehicle. If the vehicle has child safety locks, use them when we're transporting, and don't forget to turn that feature off. Transporting perps in a 12-passenger van. If an RMP with a partition is available, avoid using 12-passenger van. So this was on a prior exam. And I think it was on the in-basket portion of the exam where you had to do a prisoner transport. And you had two choices, RMP and a van. Look what it says here. They want you to avoid using the van. So the RMP was the proper choice, okay? Top of the next page. But if a van is going to have to be utilized, rear cuff, double lock the handcuffs. Place the perp on the second bench and utilize the seatbelt. Follow the arrow to the right. Recorder will be on the first bench. I hope you guys and girls really follow that, because this is some serious safety shit. And I seen it while I was active. You see a van doing a transport. You have the operator driving, and where the fuck is the recorder sitting in reality? Which is no good. Right next to him in the front seat. No good, all right? No good on test day and no good in reality. That recorder should be right behind the operator, taking up the whole bench. Put your fucking leg up. Sit there, all right? Do not go in the front seat. Now, how do we situate the perps? Depending on how many we have, all right? Next line, or two lines. If available, use the electric rear door lock. Normally, do not transport more than 3 perps. So that could be an answer. Normally, don't transport more than 3 perps. Now, follow the arrow to the right. If transporting 4 or more perps, if available, leg restraints should be used in addition to rear cuffing. If leg restraints are used, then your transport chains are not required. So we all know what leg restraints are, right? That's common sense. When they talk about transport chains, what are they referring to? Back in my day, they still call it that, I think, daisy chains, all right? So that's what they're talking about. If leg restraints are used, you got their feet locked up, then don't worry about the daisy chains. Next bullet in the box, I would highlight it. No more than 7 perps in a van. Depending on where you worked and you had to do a prisoner transport, I can almost guarantee that fucking van had 10 perps. Again, forget about reality, okay? Forget about reality. On test day, 7 is the max when we use a van. So you have the operator, you have the recorder, then the second bench. We have how many perps? 3. Then the last bench, it's longer, right? There we stick 4. That's the max on test day, 7. Back to the left side. Operator and recorder will be physically present at embarkment and disembarkment and should assist the perps in and out of the van so they don't fall. If a perp resists, is threatening or dangerous, or attempts suicide or escapes, notify your attendants or corrections. Make an activity log entry and also an entry in your detention alert section of the prisoner movement slip. Box regarding leg restraints. We're going to see this again in prisoners, but this is a great test question. Leg restraints must be used. The rule is 3 times, but there's going to be an exception now. Perp refuses to be fingerprinted, leg restraints. Is being transported to a hospital, leg restraints. Is high escape risk, leg restraints. Unless, look what it says, the desk determines there are extenuating circumstances, then we will make a command log entry indicating the reason why. But the one exception that we will always use leg restraints, high escape risk. Look what it says, desk officer, the bubble on the right. After conferring with AO, if prisoner deemed a high escape risk, leg restraints must be used. So high escape risk, the desk officer has no discretion. But somebody refusing to be printed or going to the hospital, they want us to use leg restraints, right? But depending on the scenario, the desk officer can decide not to. We think a prisoner is going to the hospital automatically. We want you to use leg restraints because maybe they're going to try to escape. That's the NYPD's mentality. But they give the desk officer the discretion. If we lock somebody up and we broke their fucking arm, we got to take them to the hospital. Most likely we're taking them to the hospital because we broke their arm, not because they were going to escape. So in that scenario, we can decide not to use leg restraints. But the one time we always have to use leg restraints when we determine high escape risk. Going back to the beginning of this lesson, when we determine somebody's high escape risk, how many cops? 2 UMOS, all right? All right, under the box. Do not carry firearms within detention facilities. Respond to the borough court section intake area with your perp and arrest paperwork. Upon entering facility, secure firearms in designated department locker. Prior to leaving the facility, retrieve your firearms. I'm sure it happened to somebody in here. You did your transport, and then you left, and you forgot your fucking gun. You're halfway back to your command, and you're like, oh shit, my gun is still in the locker. Happened to me when I was in narcotics, all right? It happens to everybody, so it's in the book. Prior to leaving, get your gun. In Manhattan, where do you secure it? Corrections security booth in the intake Sally Port area. We lock somebody up, and they may be ODing. Never bring them to a police facility. They are going to the hospital. If an ambulance is not present, call the patrol sergeant who will decide whether to await the ambulance or transport via RMP. So remember, we don't want people dying in our house. So we take them to the hospital and let them die, all right? Never in a police facility. I'm not trying to say let them die in a mean way. I just want that point to be hammered home. All right, what if they have to use the bathroom? Same-sex UMOS escorts defendants to unoccupied detention cells if available. It says use detention cells first. Don't bring them to a regular bathroom. Bring them to a detention cell. Alarms are supposed to be working, locks, and the toilet should be operational. Let's go to... Oh, geez, time is ticking. Go to page 17. Rights of person taken into custody. UMOS. When a defendant is in custody and we question, Miranda must be given. That's the equation you learned back in the academy, right? Explain parts not understood and cease questioning, I would highlight 2 times. If the perp asks for an attorney, question's over, or wants to remain silent, stop questioning. Contact attorney if defendant requests, and this is the same rule we covered earlier. If difficulty with English or is hearing impaired, comply with procedures in 212. Command log entry when interpretation services are utilized, desk officer duty. If attorney is present, ask defendant if they want to see the attorney. Highlight this, if the attorney doesn't know the client, no interview. Allow interview, I would highlight this too. So we're going to allow the attorney to speak to his or her client. It's going to be in the muster room for a reasonable time and under uniformed members of the service observation. And this attorney interview will go on the supplement or the online, all right? So there's kind of a little conflict. Just remember this rule, as I want to throw it out there now. If an attorney interviews a perp in the precinct of arrest, the desk officer precinct of arrest enters it on the online. If an attorney interviews the perp in the borough court section, it's going on an arrest report supplement, all right? Sometimes it gets a little confusing in the guide here. So that's the way it goes. So again, attorney visit goes on the online or supplement, and what do you actually write? Name, address, phone number of attorney. If interview conducted, time the attorney arrived and departed, identity of person who retained the attorney. And look what it says in the box on the right. The desk officer personally enters the interview on the online or supplement. We have an attorney looking for a client of his who is in our custody for the first time. Means they had no contact with him. MOS who receives the phone call. Enter this info into the telephone record, time, name, phone number of attorney, and name of defendant. And then notify communication section. So we saw it earlier. Communication section is the same as radio dispatcher. You may see it in the patrol guide, CU. So if you answer the TS phone call and this attorney says, I'm looking for George Mifsud, and he's not in your cell, he's not in your precinct, what do? Telephone record, notify Central. Central is going to send a message throughout the whole job. Desk officer, all desk officers this applies to. Determine if the perp is in your department facility. MOS informs the desk officer of the location of the defendant. Stop questioning and allow defendant to call the attorney and notify the originator of the finest message. Let's take our last break and we'll continue with some more arrest stuff. All right, we're going to start up on page 18 with live scanning. If you guys and girls can give messages to your lieutenants in the command, because a lot of lieutenants are not on social media, so they don't pay attention. The captain's exam course, just tell them, in case they didn't see the message, was starting in May, but we're starting in April now. So we're starting somewhat earlier for them to give them more time. Some of them don't know. I made a video while I was on vacation explaining that, and they, like I said, they're not on social media. So just let them know, if you know they're studying and they're coming to our course. We're starting in April now. All right, live scan, fingerprint in our perps, UMOS, generate arrest number in the Omni, and get a check digit, put that on the top right corner of the worksheet. If the collar is for other authority, top charge is appropriate FOA code, ensure a NICID number is assigned by either printing the perp on live scan, or if printed by respective federal agency, a dupe is generated and immediately delivered to the NYPD ID section along with a copy of the online. Appropriately trained investigators from the New York State Attorney General's office are allowed to use our live scan machines. So here we go. What we're supposed to do when we print perps. Ensure the hands are dry and clean. I don't know. I've never come across a perp with clean hands. If hands are excessively dry, we use the pre-scan pads. Good luck finding that. After each prisoner, clean the machine with authorized material, Windex with ammonia D and litho pads. Good luck getting those as well. But if we need them, it says get them from the quartermaster. Don't leave any fingerprint box open. Indicate if the perp has a scar, missing finger, etc. Check the transmit queue to ascertain if prints are transmitted. Live scan, it's bold, it's bold and it's capitalized, highlighted. Live scan processing should not exceed 3 hours from time of arrest unless there's some type of emergency. So desk officer or the arrest processing supervisor, override after 4 attempts are made and make a command log entry with the reason why, and also that you concurred the rejected print is the best that can be obtained. For those that collar a lot and you deal with crackheads, you know when you're printing them, their fingertips are burnt. On test day, 4 times before we can override it because they're a crackhead with nothing left on their tips. All right, top of the next page. Live scan should remain on. Scanner covers closed when we're not using it. Recalibrate at least once per tour to ensure the prints are acceptable that are going to the ID section and DCJS. Busy commands must recalibrate more frequently. So the rule is once a tour. Routine operational problems, call the Borough Court Section or CJB. Technical problems, call ITB's service desk. We have suspicion of intentional damage. The desk officer makes a command log entry and initiates investigation. Evidence of intentional damage results in immediate investigation and appropriate action. If they're going here, this is probably where they're going to be going. We have a perp who refuses to be printed or is going to the hospital. Desk officer or arrest processing boss. Immediately notify Borough Court Section supervisor with the perp's name, arrest number, fax control number, time of refusal, or time hospitalized, admission number, and be guided by them. Follow the arrow so you can see how the procedure flows. The Borough Court Section boss will give the instructions to the desk officer to ask the perp again after all the paperwork is done. Do you want to get printed? If he says yes, print them on the live scan and note compliance again in 3 places. Here is a great test question. When a perp refuses to be printed, it goes in the CPR, command log, prisoner movement slip, and we do a refused print report. So we asked him again. The first time he said, no, I don't want to get printed. The second time we asked him again, because that's what the Borough Court Section says. Ask him again when all the paperwork is done. Are you going to get printed now? No, I am not. So now what happens? You must use leg restraints on, have the prisoner lodged at the Borough Court Section, and again, make those 3 entries. Even though you use leg restraints, you must still rear cuff. Don't get that confused with what I said earlier. When you're using leg restraints, you don't have to use what? Daisy chains. Here it says if you're using leg restraints, you still will rear cuff the perp. But don't use daisy chains because we're hooked up with 4 or 5 other perps when we have leg restraints. Live scan down. Desk officer or supervisor have the arresting or assigned officer immediately notify ITB in an attempt to correct the problem. If ITB tells you the problem is not correctable, find out how long live scan will be down, and is it just down in my command or is it the whole city? If ITB advises that the problem is not correctable, the desk officer, if it's just down in your precinct, highlight, have the perp brought to the adjoining precinct by other than the AO for printing. Great test question, all right? We don't send the AO to have him printed in another command. The AO will stay and continue with the arrest processing. If it's down citywide, what happens? Desk officer notifies the Borough Court Section boss, who will determine if the defendant will be ink printed. Anybody here on a job when we used to ink print people? Probably not. If you are, probably late in the game taking a sergeant exam, all right? So, if it's down citywide, Borough Court Section will determine to ink print. I would love to see how that works out because nobody probably knows even how to do that. So what do? Have the fingerprint and palm print charge delivered by other than AO or assigned officer with a copy of the online to the Borough Court Section concerned, highlight it, no later than 3 hours after time of arrest. Time of arrest. We're talking about printing. If I want to write a test question and get a lot of people, I would say no more than 3 hours from time of being printed. No, time of arrest. Let's go, got to skip a little here, go to page 21. Again, same rule applies. Whatever is not covered, you are still responsible for it. It's a tiny procedure, but I just want to cover it real quick. Arrest by one of you outside the city, and you were not specifically assigned or ordered. So if Central Robbery is going to lock somebody up out here in Suffolk County and they make a collar, this doesn't kick in, all right? They're talking about you are making an off-duty collar outside New York City, all right? You just come across a robbery out here. You, the cop who made the collar, follow arrest procedure of Suffolk County, which has jurisdiction, and notify who? Operations immediately, and prepare a report to your CO ASAP. Not much meat on the bone, but easily can be manipulated with other actors, all right? And remember, hopefully you remember what I've been saying more than once. When you see outside the city, who should be your default answer? Operations. And there was another unit that came into play a few weeks back. Outside the city for a member who is AWOL, who are we notifying? ICCU, Intercity Correspondence Unit, all right? But most of the time, outside the city equals operations. Let's go to page 22. Turnover arrest. This is basically when we're going to give a collar to another cop. And there are numerous reasons why we would assign a collar to another cop. Look at the box on the right. If the AO is injured, it's going to another cop. Off-duty arrest, going to another cop. Speaking of off-duty arrest, who gets notified? If we have an off-duty collar, who do we notify? And who notifies the CO duty captain? Desk officer, all right? It was in today's lesson. When else can we reassign the collar? DAT-able offense, for other authority collar or a collar on a warrant, mass arrest at a detail or disorder or demo, family court arrest can be reassigned, violation of order protections can be reassigned, arrest by a civilian, which we saw earlier, or any other the supervisor deems appropriate. So here's the procedure. Desk officer or patrol detail supervisor determine if arrest should be turned over. Look at the little bubble on the right. I would highlight it. This must be approved by a supervisor. I'm sure you do it, which is fine in reality. 7'5" Adam makes a collar. What do you hear on the air? Anybody in the 7'5" looking? Yeah. Come over to whatever, Penn and whatever cross street. On test day, that is no good. You cannot reassign the collar cop to cop. All right? A boss has to do it. Supervisor approves turnover ASAP after arrest. Earliest opportunity, the supervisor should ID the AO, make an entry in their activity log. Desk officer, ensure the AO provides assigned officer with all arrest paperwork, evidence, information concerning the arrest, and that the assigned officer has re-interviewed any complainant witness if it applies. Make a command log entry with the ID of the AO and assigned officer, details of the arrest, and if the assigned officers re-interviewed the complainant or witness. Do not, highlight it, do not reassign the arresting officer until re-interviews are complete. We need that new cop to speak to the complainant witness. Assign a uniformed member to provide transportation to civilians for re-interviews if possible. Assigned cop, re-interview the complainant and witness and immediately notify the supervisor of any new info or discrepancy. And it says the desk officer will enter the re-interview in the command log, and you will check yes on line 5. You're the officer assigned caption of the online, and enter the AO's info in lines 1, 2, and 31. You don't need to know the lines of the online, but just know that when that collar is reassigned, you are the assigned officer. You are not the AO, because the AO is still going to be listed as the AO. When I say AO, I mean arresting officer. Go to page 24. sorry, not 27. Can't even read my own handwriting. Identification, lineup, show-ups. This has appeared in our prior test. 2 quick definitions. What's a lineup? Crime suspect in an array with at least 5 others to be ID'd by a victim or witness. So it's going to be a total of 6. The perp plus 5 fillers. What's a show-up? I shouldn't even have to read this. I'm not even going to read it. You all know what a show-up is, all right? I'm sure everybody here made a collar. So UMOS, if there's doubt whether we need to conduct a lineup or a show-up or legality of a lineup or show-up, you consult with the desk officer or patrol supervisor. Now look at what the box here says on the right. When we do a lineup, supervisor from the squad or qualified investigative unit must personally supervise it and ensure the lineup report is made. So this person has to supervise it. But you as the cop, if you doubt something with the lineup or regarding the legality, don't go to this guy who has to supervise it. Go to the desk officer or patrol supervisor. Second bullet under the cop is the equation. Custody interrogation equals Miranda. Inform the perp why they are in a lineup, and do not tell the perp they have a right to attorney. Defendant does not have the right to an attorney to be present at a lineup, but if the attorney happens to be present, allow to observe from lineup room or where they cannot be seen. They are not allowed to talk to witnesses, and if they have suggestions, we may consider them if it will improve the fairness. They're reasonable and practical. If an attorney calls the house and wants to be present for this lineup, it says we will delay for a reasonable time. What's the definition of reasonable? It doesn't say, but here's the definition of unreasonable. It's inconvenient to witnesses or it undermines the advantage of a prompt ID. Now we have some show-up rules. We are supposed to bring the suspect back to the scene of the crime if it's within reasonable time after commission, and the patrol guide says 1 hour or more depending on circumstances, reasonable distance to the crime scene, and the show-up cannot unnecessarily be suggestive. It means you don't tell the complainant victim, you see that guy in the handcuffs? He's the one who robbed you, right? You're pretty much spoon-feeding the person. That's what they're saying by being unnecessarily suggestive. Can we do an emergency show-up? Yes. If we have an ill or injured, they may die. However, we make every effort to maintain full lineup safeguards at the hospital. Next page. First, third platoon arrest. Some interesting facts here that you guys and girls are going to learn. That doesn't happen in reality, but you need to know for test day. So we're going to take a midnight cop who makes a collar first, and then we'll deal with a 4 to 12 cop, okay? So we'll start with the box on the left. Midnight cop makes a collar and returns from court within 6 hours of their next midnight tour. So they make a collar at 0500 and they return from court within 6 hours of the next tour. So for the midnight, we want you to have 6 hours before your next tour. Keep that 6-hour rule in mind because it doesn't apply to 4 to 12 people. Very weird, but that's the rule, all right? So you don't have 6 hours before your next tour. What are your options for your tour? You could stay, work, you're going to be assigned to the house. You could say, hey, I want to go home and I'll do a day tour. Or you could submit a 28 and have the tour off. Next scenario, the midnight cop works through the next tour and into their midnight tour. So you made the collar and you're still processing it, and 23:15 comes around and you're still processing the collar. So now you just started your next tour. Now what are your options? You can stay in the house for the remainder of the tour. You're not going on patrol. Or you can drop a 28. You cannot say, let me do a day tour. Think about it. You already started your midnight, all right? You're back on straight time now, so you can't have that option of doing a day tour. Third platoon rules. UMOS makes a collar, works through the next tour, but is ready for the complaint room by 0800 hours. So what happens? OT ends at 0800 and you automatically work in a second platoon. This is something that I'm sure you guys and girls are not aware of. Some of you may, some of you may not. This would happen all the time, especially with my guys in anti-crime. 4 to 12, you make a collar, right? Let's say you're done with your collar at 3 in the morning. Now you need to speak to a DA. The DA is not coming in until 8. According to the book, your overtime ends at what time? 0800. It says OT ends at 0800. So you're supposed to get paid all the way through when your day tour starts. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that in reality because your ICO and your CO is going to get pissed. But that is the rule. You're supposed to get paid until 0800 when your day tour starts. Next scenario for the 4 to 12 guy. You make the collar, you work through your tour, and you don't make the complaint room by 0800, and now you are working into your next 4 to 12. What are your options? You stay in a house for the remainder of your tour, or you drop a 28. You see, there is no 6-hour rule when it comes to the 4 to 12 guys making a collar. And that's what it says right under the box. If an MOS on a 3rd platoon ends overtime 1 hour prior to their next 3rd platoon, he does not have to be given off or assigned non-patrol duty. If they work into the next 3rd platoon, then the above applies. So just think about it. That's just crazy. You're doing a 15 by 2335. You make a collar, and you wrap all the way around, and now it's 1400. You're 1 hour before your next tour. Your options are right there, what we just said. Stay in the house or drop a 28, all right? Additional data rules. You'll attach overtime slip to your court slip and submit to the desk officer for approval. The desk officer will ensure the OT slip and court slip are properly prepared and attached as required. This next bullet should sound familiar. Going back to week 2. OT slips submitted without required court slips attached shall not be approved by the desk officer without an investigation being conducted. Hopefully you remember that from week 2, all right? After the desk officer investigates, OT may be approved if appropriate. However, a copy of the report detailing facts of the investigation will be attached to the OT slip in lieu of the missing court slip. All right, we are like 2 minutes left, and there's no way. Oh, man. So, DATs are in today's lesson. Every test has one question on DATs. Just look at page 33. Page 33, 208-81, and page 34 have a list of what will disqualify somebody from getting a DAT. This list is tremendously long. It never used to be this long. We used to have an acronym for it, but they added so many different crimes in here that would stop somebody from getting DAT that you can't even make an acronym anymore. Me personally, there's no way I would be able to memorize this whole list, all right? Some of them, I mean, are straight up like, if you look at the beginning of page 33, the first, like this is all new. You failed to appear in criminal court in the last 2 years for a criminal court proceeding. That means you have an open case and you haven't showed up. Why the fuck would we give you a DAT? Like some of these, they shouldn't get you with, all right? Family offense, violate order protection. The next one, escape. Listen to the crime you're getting collared for. Escape, absconding from treatment facility, or bail jumping. Why would we give you a DAT if we are collaring you for one of those, all right? A lot of them are common sense, but then there are a lot of other ones in there that have certain degrees or sub-degrees, if I'm studying, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to read through it once or twice. I'm going to highlight the ones that stand out. There's no way to get down every disqualifying one. If they go here, hopefully it's going to be the important ones, like that are on the top of page 33. Family offenses. If you look at the next page, political hate crimes. That, if you see, I highlighted all of it because that's new to the list of non-DATable offenses, all right? There's no easy way to tackle this list. And I'm being straight honest with you. You just got to read it once or twice, highlight anything that you think is out of the ordinary. I don't think they would hit you. Hopefully they don't hit you with one of these obscure ones that are listed in there, like if you look at page 34. Like if they tell you menacing second degree. First of all, you know, I told you my philosophy. I never studied penal law. So I don't even know what a second degree menacing is. I know what menacing is in general, but I would never know what a second degree is. If they get that petty, then my philosophy is they can have that question. I'm not studying what's a menacing 2, what's harassment 1, what's tampering with a witness 3. There's too many disqualifiers to get down that are attached to the penal law that you would have to read. Just read through it once or twice. If I'm writing it, I'm going to throw in violate order protection. The main ones you should know, okay? And then there's another new procedure in here at the page 34. Conferring with a DA regarding a DAT. That may be a good procedure that they hit you with a question. 208, by the way, you average like 10 questions out of 208. And there's 80-something procedures. 207, there's 38 procedures, and like I said earlier, you average 10 questions. Next week, we're going to cover the rest of 208. Family offense, DV, is next week. That procedure alone is on every test, and on your, I don't know if it was the last sergeant's test, but on one of them recent, 3 questions from 208, 36, and 37 alone, which we'll cover next week. So do your homework for next week. Do whatever we didn't do in here today, all right? And I'll see you all next Saturday. Enjoy tomorrow's 70-degree weather. Still got to study, though.